All right, first and foremost, I'm going to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kwadash. I want to give double honor to the apostles and bishops of Great Millstone, and shalom to the 144,000, the rest of the elect. This is just another quick and transit lesson. Some big breaking news. Even though you see the whole world right now is distracted with the Knicks winning the championship, and you know, it's been whatever 50-some years. They even had the numbers as far as how many people was tuned in to this 2026 NBA Finals, and they said it hasn't been as many people watching like this since 1998. So we know the whole world right now is distracted, and the people of New York City are as delusional as ever. The city is falling under pandemonium right about now, where you know, they lighting shit on fire. I mean, they just running down on people and fucking them up. Just completely bugging out, complete madness in New York City right about now. And while all that's going on, well, China, they just launched their Neo brain chip. All right, I got this article from thepeoplesvoice.tv, and when I reach my destination, which will be shortly, I'm gonna actually read the article, but for now I'm gonna just read this headline, and which, by the way, I did fact check this, so I'm gonna read also the Google AI overview. But the headline reads, "Become superhuman or get left behind. Millions of Chinese line up to become cyborgs as CCP launches Neo brain chip." All right, so Neo brain chip is China's BCI, their brain computer interface, similar to Neuralink, similar to Synchron, which are American companies, you know, Elon Musk company and his competition, right? But yeah, they're doing it. All right, China's doing it. They're moving forward. They're advancing toward the new world order, because that's what this whole agenda is. This agenda of microchipping everybody. Well, the scriptures prophesied it as the mark of the beast. When John the Revelator saw the vision of people receiving this chip, he was instructed by the Holy Spirit to call it the mark of the beast, which the beast being NATO and the EU, along with America, the so-called white man's power structure, his kingdom that he set up here in these last days, all right? Which, by the way, the so-called white man is Esau, Edom, according to the Bible. He's the devil and Satan that the scriptures speak of, and the wicked. All right, we know that Job 9:24 tells you the earth was given into the hand of the wicked. So who's in control? The international banking families, beginning with the Rothschilds on down. All right, who are Edomites. They're the ones who are pushing forward this agenda. This is a global agenda. All right, this microchipping, this mass microchipping of the human population, this transhumanism agenda of merging man with machine, man with technology. All right, the mass rollout of AI data centers all over the world, and bringing forth this digital ID along with the digital economy to basically pave the way to ultimately implement and make mandatory the mark of the beast. And how do we know that? Well, China just confirmed it once again, just like Elder Apostle Tahar said and says. China is the prototype for the rest of the world. They are basically the test subject. And China has already been under that digital ID social credit system for a long time. All right, for a long time. They've already been under that system. And now they're basically finalizing it by rolling out this brain chip. All right, calling it a superhuman. What the hell does that even mean? You know, as we about to get into, they're claiming, as well as Elon Musk, they're claiming that this chip is going to heal people that are disabled. All right, people that have lost the ability to use their arms. All right, they have nervous system damage. They're quadriplegics or paraplegics or whatever they call it in the medical field. You know, people that have these type of diseases and conditions. Well, they're claiming that this is for them. You know, this is going to heal them. This is going to restore their ability to use their bodies once again. How is that a superhuman? That's going to be my first thing. How can you push that narrative that that's a superhuman when this is a person that's disabled? And how are you going to get left behind if this is supposed to be for people who are jacked up? Why would a person that's not jacked up need to take this? And why would they be left behind on anything? You telling me a motherfucker that's in a wheelchair, that could barely talk, that can't even fucking wipe his own ass or feed himself, and now they're going to give him a chip in his brain that'll give him a limited ability to control a computer with his brain, right? To be able to talk through a device that's not even his voice, sounding like a damn robot. You gonna tell me I'm gonna be left behind somebody like that? They're gonna be a superhuman? That's what transhumanism is about. That's what that ideology is about. Because I'm not gonna count somebody that is using a piece of technology where they can't even fully function the same way that I can. I'm not gonna count that as a superhuman above me. All right, and yeah, we know that we in these corruptible fucking bodies, you know, these sick, fragile, weak bodies. We waiting for the change to come from Yahweh Shai. All right, ain't no microchip gonna make you a superhuman. All right, it's not gonna make you immortal. It's not gonna make you, yeah, it may give you an ability to download information faster, and you're gonna have the illusion that you're a superhuman. But when Yahweh Shai and the heavenly angels come, that's not gonna match up to those celestial bodies and the extraterrestrial bodies that we're gonna get on the earth. All right, when Yahweh Shai appears, that can't compare to that. So this is nothing but the serpent's doctrine that he told Eve. All right, you're going to be as God, knowing good and evil. Because remember, taking this chip is a sin. The mark of the beast is not sin within itself. It's not just, oh, you commit a sin, now you got the mark. No, the mark of the beast is the RFID microchip implant. But taking that mark is a sin according to Leviticus 19 and 28. Because what is sin? The transgression of the law. If you transgress the law, statutes, and commandments of the Bible, you're committing a sin, right? So Leviticus 19:28 says, don't make no cutting in your flesh. How do they put this chip in you? They got to open your brain up, or they got to open somewhere in your body up. They got to put a cutting in your flesh and insert the chip in you, the charagma. All right, that's what that Greek word goes back to. The Greek word for mark in Revelation 13:16 is charagma. But ultimately, it tells you in the 17th verse that no man will be able to buy or sell without that mark. So this is beyond just the pseudo miracles, the counterfeit wonders and fake miracles that this so-called white man is performing with the chip. This is ultimately the staple of the New World Order. All right, this is how they're going to bring together the Internet of Things, the digital bodies, all right, the integrated, you know, transhumanism, the man and machine integration, the fourth industrial revolution, what they also call the digital age. You know, this is the thing that's going to basically make it complete. And once again, they showed you that by first doing it in China. All right, they're going to do it in Europe as well. That's probably going to be the next place that they launch this, you know, this chipping agenda in. But yeah, it's going down. All right, and if they're doing it over there, once again, how much longer until they bring it over here to America, to Babylon the Great? It's only going to be a matter of time until the digital ID is rolled out over here, the digital economy, you know, when they do away with cash and eventually bring forth these same laws and legislation that the China Communist Party is doing, which is to have people get this brain chip, man, this microchip, this mark of the beast. It's only going to be a matter of time until it comes over here. So we living in very exciting times, and you know, this clearly shows you, if you're measuring the time, this shows you that, you know, time is short for this man's kingdom. Because we know that according to Job, the 20th chapter, once he is about to fill his belly, meaning fulfill his enterprise, you know, complete his agenda, which is to ultimately microchip everybody, after the culling, after the thinning of the herd, right? We know that the scriptures say he's going to be in straits. We know that Yahweh Shai is going to be coming back, man. World War III is going to be going nuclear. All right, which is going to be the end of Esau Edom's age, his rulership, or his world, his kingdom. So another thing that I wanted to point out before I stop and read this article is that they called it Neo. All right, that's the name of the company. It's actually called Neo something. I'm going to get it in a sec, but they call it Neo for short. And the first thing that you think of when you hear Neo is that movie The Matrix, which, you know, when you rearrange the word Neo, it comes out to one, which that's what, you know, they were saying in the movie, that he was the one, the chosen one, if you will. So, you know, I find that interesting that they pushing that Neo vibration, that Matrix. You know, he basically has special abilities in the movie. And what was the movie about? Ultimately predictive programming, right? It was about AI or machinery, you know, technology, robots taking over the world and having humans in slavery, as opposed to the contrary, where humans use technology to become better. The technology enslaved the humans. All right, they had humans in these pods and shit. They was basically making babies the same way how these devils are trying to do now. You know, making basically GMO babies, man, making embryos, you know, 3D printed body parts. And, you know, I forgot what it was. It was like a uterus or whatever that, you know, these devils created it, you know, a fake womb, basically an artificial womb, and had a baby, you know, be formed in an artificial uterus. Some crazy shit like that. You know, some dystopian ass science fiction shit, you know, where that's the power that these devils were given on the left-hand side, all right, from Satan. That's why it speaks about that in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, that he's going to come with these false miracles, with these powers and signs and lying wonders to come and do the working of Satan. All right, putting a microchip in your body, that's nothing but the working of Satan. All right, that's not holy. That's not going to make you a god. That's going to make you a complete demon. The scriptures speak about how you're going to get a grievous sore. You know, how ultimately the Heavenly Father is going to destroy you for taking that chip. So this is the opposite of godly and righteous. But, you know, again, they're pushing this medical perspective, this medical narrative that is to heal people. And I'm about to park up right now, so just bear with me 1 second, and then we're going to read this article. And like I said, the Google AI overview, which is a fact check of this article. All right. So yeah, again, this is from the peoplesvoice.tv. The Chinese Communist Party has officially kicked off the age of the cyborg, while Elon Musk's Neuralink continues navigating regulatory hurdles in the U.S. China has surged ahead with the launch of Neo, the world's first commercially approved brain-computer interface implant. So remember, Trump just recently put forth this executive order to fast-track the 6G system. I think it was called a race of 6G or something like that, in which he's always saying this, that America is behind China. You know, we need to catch up. They're beating us in the AI race and the technology race and etc. Now you know what they're talking about. Because we're not just going to wake up tomorrow and the chip is going to be made mandatory. It's going to be made law like it is happening in China. You know, that system been in place for a while, where they had the digital ID and, you know, it's basically been cashless for a while. Here in America, you know, there's still things that need to take place before the chip could be made mandatory. And yeah, it could happen suddenly through some type of false flag event, you know, some type of terrorist attack or cyber attack on the power grid, which I believe that's very likely to happen through the spirit. Of course, it can happen suddenly, but we know that these things happen gradually. The elites use something called gradualism or conditioning on the people to prevent culture shock. All right, you can't just introduce something, a societal change, and make it normal overnight. It has to be done in gradual steps, and a lot of those steps include order ab chaos, you know, basically creating crises and chaos to then bring forth these laws and agendas, such as the pandemic, you know, being a perfect example, the COVID-19, things like that. Something like that is probably going to have to happen before they could just implement this chip all of a sudden. Over here, I'm saying, in America. But again, if we seeing it happen in China, if we seeing it happen in Europe, eventually it's going to come to America. That's just the fact of the matter. All right, so let's read some more of the article. And according to reports flooding in from China, millions of citizens are already queuing up to get wired directly into the beast system. And I like how, you know, the people who control this site, which is an alternative news media site, they do know that the mark of the beast is the chip. All right. And again, they put fact-checked information up even though it's alternative news, you still got to be careful, because sometimes you got these satire news sites that they just be talking shit. You know, you got to vet your information and you got to fact check your information, which is what I did. It says officially version 1 of the coin-sized Neo implant developed by Shanghai-based Neurical Technology, that's the company, Neurical, in partnership with Sung, I don't know how to say that, University researchers, is designed to enhance the nervous system of patients suffering from spinal cord injuries and paralysis. It sits on top of the brain's protective membrane, the dura mater, using 8 sensors to read signals to help restore hand and arm function, allowing users to control robotic gloves or external devices through thought alone. Well, how do we do it? I mean, how does a regular human control your arm and your hand? Through thought. How is this a miracle? How is this a superhuman? All you're doing is restoring something to somebody, and it's not even true restoring or healing. It's not even a real miracle, because you have to put a chip in their brain. All you're doing is giving them the ability to have something that they already lost. That's not a superhuman. I say that it's more powerful and super that a person could do it purely off their mind, and they don't need this man's technology to enhance them to be able to do it. You're at a disadvantage with that chip in your brain. You're not at an advantage. You're not leaving nobody behind, but that's what they want you to believe, so you could be on board to taking this chip. They want you to believe that you're going to be left behind. You're not going to be as savvy or as trendy, and ultimately the truth about it is that, yeah, you won't be able to buy and sell anyway. So in a way, you will be left behind, but they're trying to make it sound like you're going to be less of a person if you don't take this chip, when it's actually the other way around. If you take the chip, you've made yourself an enemy to Yahweh Shai and his righteousness, and therefore you're going to be destroyed. But see, this is that deception that the scriptures speak about, that those that were deceived who took the mark of the beast. Clinical trials reported showing promising results with dozens of patients. But let's be real, when has the CCP ever stopped at helping the disabled? The real agenda, total mind-machine integration. Insiders and independent observers warn this is no mere medical device. Neo represents the first mass market gateway into full human augmentation, a stepping stone toward a population of compliant, hyper-efficient cyborgs perfectly integrated with the state's digital surveillance apparatus. That's what it's really about. Completely having control over you as a human. Owning you. That's what that word mark, charagma in the Greek, meant. Is basically like the mark that they'll put upon a horse, that the owner of the horse will put on the horse to identify that it belongs to him. All right, that's what charagma ultimately meant. A cutting, an incision in your flesh that represents who your master is, that you belong to somebody. That's what this whole chip thing is all about. See, John, the prophet, the apostle John, when he had the vision, he already warned us of that. So regardless of what these devils are saying, it's to help the disabled people, it's to do this, it's for the good of humanity. We know that ultimately it's to mark you as his property, as you belong to him in his new world order. And he's going to watch, track, trace, and monitor and allow and not allow everything you do. This is ultimately what it's about. It says China's breakneck approval, beating Neuralink to commercial status, wasn't slowed by the kind of ethical debates or safety concerns plaguing Western efforts. Why? Because in Beijing, this technology aligns perfectly with the party's vision of social harmony through total technological control. And they have something over here called what? The Internet of Things, smart cities, which is basically like the same kind of concept, you know, social harmony. Because if they're able to watch everything and they have this pre-crime system and everybody's chipped, you know, they can make it a more peaceful world. There's not going to be no more sicknesses because they can heal everything with the chip. That's the agenda that's being pushed. That's the narrative that they're pushing to try to make this thing sound like it's going to be for the good of humanity. And again, that's how they're going to get you people, man. These are going to be the powers, the signs, and the lying wonders of Satan, the so-called white man Satan, the devil, Esau, Edom. This is how he's going to basically persuade the masses of people to take in this chip, along with, of course, some type of event where people are going to be in a complete state of fear and panic and anxiety. And they're not going to have any other answers as to how this is going to be fixed. You know, how they're going to basically bring society back to normal, quote unquote. Just like, again, same thing with the COVID-19 scandemic. And what was that all about? Getting the majority of the people of the world, I think 70%, if I'm not mistaken, took more than 2 of those inoculations. All right, that's what that was about. Now, the next one is going to be for this chip. It says sources close to the rollout claim that beyond the initial medical trials, applications are expanding rapidly. Government-backed health insurance is already covering the procedure in many provinces, dramatically lowering barriers for quote-unquote volunteers. Social media platforms inside the Great Firewall are buzzing with stories of long waiting lists, not just among the paralyzed, but amongst ambitious young professionals, students, and even factory workers seeking any edge in an increasingly automated economy. So these will be like your technocrats and your biohackers among society that they know the direction that everything is going in. All right, the digital age, transhumanism, and they want to be ahead of the curve, so to speak. All right, they want to be one of the first in line to get in this chip, to feel like they have some type of advantage over everybody else in society. And that's what's going to make it trending. Remember, people have a herd mentality. Once people see a group of other people doing something and they're all doing it in agreement and, you know, they're finding quote unquote success, then you're going to have all the people that's on the bandwagon. That's just how society is. That's how the people of this world are, because their mind's been trained to be like that. All right. That's why they also call it what? Herd immunity. They always comparing you people to a herd of cattle. All right, they even call you Goyim, talking about these small hats, the ones that are at the top, these international bankers. They refer to the people of the world as Goyim, all right, which is basically, it's supposed to mean nations, the Goy, you know, the nations, the heathens, right? But it's basically like they're calling you cattle, like you're their property, and they can do whatever they want to do with you. They could feed you Goy slop, they could lie to you, they could steal from you. This is all in their Babylonian Talmud, and this is the philosophy. And this is the ideology of the so-called Israelis. All right, because, yeah, the ones that are at the very, very top, they are the tribe of Amalek. All right, they are little hat wearers. But see, they in the shadows with it. They're not going to sit up and say they own the Israeli state. They'll put Bibi not a Jew up there to be the face. You know, they'll put Trump up there to be the face. But through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, we know who's really pulling the strings. All right, and a lot of people are waking up to that. And this is why you're also going to have this great resistance to the Great Reset. All right, not everybody's going to be down with this. It's going to be a small portion of people, just like with the jabs. It was only a small portion of people that actually volunteered to go get it. How did they get the rest of the people to take it? They threaten you by losing your job. All right, they threaten you by taking away benefits from you. And then that's what made the rest of the people budge and go get it. So it's going to be the same thing. This chip is already here. People are already walking around with the chip. Majority of people do not want that. But once they bring this next Black Swan event, like apostles say, we one Black Swan event away. Once they bring that forth and the climate changes again, best believe that you're going to have more and more people that'll be down with taking this chip. All right. Let's read the rest of this. Transhumanism with Chinese characteristics. Matter of fact, I mean, I'll leave the link to the article in the description. Y'all can check that out for the sake of time. I'm trying to finish up my errands here, but let's read this Google AI overview. I put CCP launches Neo brain chip. Is it true? And it said, yes, it is true. China approved Neo, the world's first commercially available invasive brain-computer interface. The device was developed by Neuracle Technology and researchers at University in Shanghai. Key facts about the Neo chip. Purpose: it is designed to help patients with paralysis and spinal cord injuries, quadriplegia, translate brain signals into digital commands to control assistive devices like robotic hands. So yeah, this is that cyborg shit that they was pushing in all these movies and these cartoons and all these decades of, Hollywood bullshit that they was pushing in your face, that people thought, this is just fantasy fiction, science fiction, Well, now you coming to find out that this was an agenda all along. And all those movies and shows and TV and all of that, that was all predictive programming. Matter of fact, let's look up that term because I said it a couple times. Let's just get the quick definition. Predictive programming, meaning. Look what it says. Predictive programming is a fringe conspiracy theory proposing that powerful entities use fictional media as a psychological conditioning tool to secretly inform the public about planned future events. How is it a fringe conspiracy theory if you had movies like Manchurian Candidate? What the hell is that movie with the pre-crime department? I forgot the name. You have all these different movies and shows and cartoons about transhumanists, cyborg humans, microchip implants in your body, mass global agendas, government agendas of implementing the chip in society and all that. How could you say it's a fringe conspiracy theory when it's true? All right, they did put this in movies in the 80s, in the 70s, the 90s. They did put it in, and now look, it's happening in real time. How is that a conspiracy theory? All right, but yeah, that's basically what predictive programming was. It was showing you what they was going to do before they do it. They also called it the revelation of the method, meaning they got to show you what they're going to do to where basically when you see it and you still go along with it, you're consenting to their evil agendas, their evil devices. And therefore, they're not wrong because they told you what they was going to do right to your face and you consented to it. It wasn't against your will, so to speak. All right, and for that, they feel like they can't be punished or, it's not wrong. It's not wicked because, hey, if I told you I was going to do this to you and you allowed me to do it and you wanted me to do it, then it's not on me. You see, that's the devil's way of escaping accountability, which the Lord is still going to hold you devils accountable. All right, because this is your evil, wicked deception that you've been using on the people, your witchcraft, your sorcery. All right, so it says how it works. Going back to the AI overview, the coin-sized chip is embedded into the skull. Unlike Neuralink, which penetrates brain tissue, Neo's sensors rest on the protective outer layer of the brain, the dura mater, which reduces surgical risk. Testing and status. It has already been tested in 36 patients. It has been integrated into China's national health insurance system. The Chinese Communist Party has classified brain-computer interfaces as a strategic priority in its latest 5-year plan, heavily supporting local companies to fast-track these technologies to market. All right, so not only are they just bringing it forth, they're fast-tracking it. Same thing that Trump was talking about, the race to 6G. All right, how the 6G is going to allow them to see another layer into a person's skin. That's what he said. So yeah, I'm looking out for this Neuralink to be next, all right, to be FDA approved and, pass all the regulations that the American government has to where, yeah, America's supposed to be a democracy, right? And, they should only be able to do something like this in China, which is a communist, because the people don't really have a say and whatnot. Hey, it's going to happen all over the world. Let's get Revelation 3 and 10 real quick. This is going to be a global agenda. It don't matter if you're in a democratic government or a communist government or fascism or whatever the fuck, socialism. All of that shit is bullshit anyways. All them politics is all bullshit. All right, the elites rule the world. All right, the wicked rule the world. And all these different political fractions is nothing but the illusion of choice. It's nothing but deception to basically have the people thinking that they have some type of freedom and say so in the direction that we all gonna go in. We all humans and humanity. We got to stick together and all this bullshit. And meanwhile, you got the top 1% ruling over the 99% of people. Or you got the top 1% that has more than 99% of all the world's natural resources, all the precious metals and, the things that really matter while they give you a piece of paper, a FRN, or some type of, fiat paper money. These people already have the power. All right, now they're going for absolute power. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience. This is a message to the hopeful elect from Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Because you're keeping the word of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, the Bible, the truth, the 100% truth, the doctrine, since you're keeping it patiently. All right, meaning what? You're suffering. You suffering in this truth. You going through all type of trials and tribulations. You going through slander, especially Great Millstone. You know, going through all of this just for the word of Yahweh Shem Yahushai's sake, for the name of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and for the testimony of Yahushai. The scriptures tell you that we was going to suffer. All right, we was going to be tried. We was going to be persecuted. We was going to be slandered, reviled, etc. Even some of us martyred. Even some of us having to die in the faith, you know, keeping the faith unto the very end. Because you do that, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation. The hour of temptation is when, it says in the NLT, I will protect you from the great time of testing that will come upon the whole world to test those who belong to this world. So it's a great time of testing. That's what the temptation part means. All right, matter of fact, when you go into that word temptation, let me get it real quick in the Greek.
Strong's G 3986, Pyrasmas. Pyrasmas.
And it says an experiment, attempt, trial, proving. And this is the point, 1b, the trial of man's fidelity, integrity, virtue, constancy, an enticement to sin, temptation, whether arising from the desires, which is something inwardly. We all have, you know, the lust in this flesh that we got to, you know, discipline and fight, or from the outward circumstances. So what is the outward circumstances going to be? This new world order, all right, this digital system that they're creating all around us to basically imprison us, you know, a digital prison, to where now if you don't consent to taking the mark of the beast, the RFID microchip implant, you won't be able to be a part of that digital society. You won't be able to buy and sell. And therefore, the internal is going to be tried. All right, how am I going to eat? How am I going to live? You know, how am I going to survive in a world like this? That's where your faith, which is an eternal thing, that's where your faith in Yahweh Shem Yahushai is going to have to kick in. Roughly paraphrasing Ephesians 2:8, by grace are ye saved through faith. All right, so that's when the grace, the mercy, and the favor of Yahweh Shem Yahushai is going to have to be upon us. That's why he's saying, I will protect you from it. Let's read it again. I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation. So this is not something that we just going to overcome because we just so strong and we hate the heathen so much. And, you know, I will never bow down. It's not about you. It's about Yahushai and the sacrifice that he made, in which is going to cover the elect of the nation of Israel, which elect means predestined, chosen. So you was already predestined to pass the hour of temptation in the end. That's really what this is all about. All right, but yeah, it's going to happen through faith. It's going to happen through the Holy Spirit, through Yahushai. Like he said, I will be with you always, even unto the end of the world. We're going to need Yahweh Shem Yahushai to strengthen us. It's by the power of the Lord. All right, Ephesians the 6th chapter, putting on the whole armor of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, which is his truth, believing wholeheartedly 100% in the names of Yahweh Shem Yahushai and his word. That's how the elect of the nation of Israel is going to overcome. All right, that's the only way. All right, so yeah, this is what's coming, man. It says, behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take away thy crown. So we must endure. All right, while you got all these other camps bugging out, teaching the mark of the beast is sin, it's eating meat, it's white women, it's all this other bullshit. They're going to be susceptible to that temptation because they're not keeping the word of the Lord's patience. And they don't even believe that the mark of the beast is the chip. So by the time that chip is presented to them, they're not going to have the same standard as to say, this is the mark of the beast. I can't take that. I was commanded not to take that. They're going to look at it and say, well, look, my family need to eat. Just like what General Yohanan said, you're going to let your children starve? No. You think the Most High care if you take a microchip in your body? That's the mentality that these other Israelites are going to have. And this is why here at GMS, you know, we push this so fervently. We're always doing lessons on this because that's what the Lord told us to do. Ezekiel 3:17, give my people warning from me. Yahweh Shem Yahushai is warning you Israelites. If you take this brain chip, you feel like you about to become a superhuman. You down with the transhumanism agenda, the new world order, the ideology of the beast system. Well, the Lord is going to destroy you. All right, if you in America, you're going to be burnt in a lake of fire, which is when America is burned with thermonuclear missiles. You basically going to be torched alive, all right, by thermonuclear heat. So you fuck around if you want to. All right, you tempt the Lord if you want to. Taking the chip, oh, I could take it out. You do that. But here in Great Millstone, we're going to teach y'all Israelites, don't take that chip by any means, even if it means getting your head chopped off. Do not take the karagma. All right, so with that, I'm going to say, Call Haloyim La Yahweh Shemel Washai Ba Shem Rakak Wadash. Hope and pray this lesson was edifying through the Holy Spirit. Shalom